This podcast is sponsored by the Fireman Moving Company. The Fireman Moving Company is the official moving company of WKU Athletics. Not only can they be trusted to move all the coaches in and out of Western, but they can move you anywhere nationwide. The Fireman Moving Company is owned and operated by firemen and is founded by WKU alumni. If you are looking to move sometime soon, give them a call at 270-791-1755 and get yourself a free quote. Welcome to Topper Talk, your number one Western Kentucky athletics podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Moffitt, and I'm joined by co-host Tyler Bailey. Hilltopper Nation, whether it's happening on the hill or on the road, grab those red towels, stand up and cheer, because it's up next on Topper Talk. All right, welcome back, and thank you for downloading and listening to another episode of the Topper Talk podcast. We are your number one source for WKU sports news and information. And as always, we are a proud member of the College Huddle podcast community. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media platforms. X and Twitter is our main home, where you're going to get daily updates with just any news and information that's WKU relevant coming through the pipe. Make sure you head over to our YouTube channel. That's at Topper Talk Podcast. Make sure you subscribe over there. Give us a like. Give us a comment on the video if you're watching, if you see something that you like. And I've got Tyler here with me, man. We've got a jam-packed, full of information episode we're ready to jump into, man. You ready?
Yeah, man. Should be a good one. Let's get into it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that we're done with the position breakdown series. So now we're jumping into the season preview and predictions, as the season's now 10 days away as we're recording. It's kind of crazy. But before we jump into that, we've got to talk about the Red Towel wrap-up, which catches us up with all the news and information we missed since we last recorded. So Tyler, hit us with that Red Towel wrap-up.
All right, so starting off strong, Topperfest is coming this Friday, 8:15.
Yeah, that's an event we've mentioned on here a couple times since it's been scheduled and as it's gotten closer, but just a really fun event, that's on campus on South Lawn, basically. A lot of food trucks, you can meet the athletes, just a lot of fun stuff going for families, for young kids. If the weather is nice, I haven't looked what the weather is going to look like. I'm sure it's going to be hot, but it is an evening event, so hopefully it'll be cooling down. And if you can make it over to campus, man, it's a really good time. Master plans going on, so there should be a lot of students on campus as well, a lot of energy as well. So just a really fun event to get to if you can.
Ryan Weidman had an electric pro debut. He went 3 of 5 with 2 RBIs and a stellar defensive play.
Yeah, man, the newest pro top. I think we actually have a couple in our Red Towel wrap up today. A couple of new pro tops. But yeah, his pro debut, 3 of 5 with 2 RBIs for the San Diego Padres, one of their minor league affiliates. So just really awesome. Not surprised. I mean, we saw everything he did this past season. Conference USA Player of the Year. He's a ball player. He should quickly rise through the Padres ranks and hopefully get on that MLB roster very soon. So congratulations to Ryan.
And moving on, something exciting. The Battle for Atlantis bracket was released, and WKU will be playing Vanderbilt to open the play.
Yeah, really good tournament that we got in, an MTE this year. Got it pulled up on the screen if you're watching on the YouTube version. We did draw Vanderbilt in the first round. That game will be on November 26th. You can see the rest of the games below at VCU, South Florida, Colorado State, Virginia Tech, Wichita State, and St. Mary. So pretty good bracket. Depending on if we win or lose that first game with Vanderbilt, obviously we'll depend on if we play VCU or USF next, but guaranteed 4 games. I'm pretty sure that is how that bracket plays out, just by the wins and losses. So really awesome that we get to basically open our season with a chance to beat an SEC school, even if it's one that's just right down the road. It feels kind of weird playing them over at the Battle for Atlantis, but hey, why not us? Why not WKU? Let's go shock them.
Lady Toppers basketball, they got a commitment from Elias Coleman. She's a 6-foot guard from Floyd Central High School out of Indiana.
Yeah, so really good pickup for Coach Collins and WKU Lady Topper basketball. That's a big guard, a 6-foot guard for women's basketball. That's a big guard. Just looking at, the guards that we currently have on the roster, she would be the biggest guard as she gets here next year. So really excited for her, and welcome to the Hill, Elise.
Talking about another pro tops player, Paige Briggs Roman re-signed with the Grand Rapid Rise.
Yeah, again, another pro top, like you said. You're re-signing with the Grand Rapids Ride. She had played with them 2 years ago when they won the championship in the Professional Volleyball League, and then she wasn't there last year. I want to say she was with Columbus, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember off the top of my head, but pretty neat. She re-signed with the Grand Rapids Ride, so best of luck to her.
And former Hilltopper Rachel Anderson Gomez signed with the Columbus Fury of the PVL.
Yeah, at this rate, with Rachel joining the Professional Volleyball League and Kaylee's also there, Paige is there, Jenna Otek was played there last year. I don't know if she's going to this coming year as well, but we might be one of the schools that has the most uh, former players or alumni playing in the Professional Volleyball League. That's pretty awesome, and definitely a big congratulations to Rachel Gomez.
And staying in the vein of WKU volleyball, they are receiving votes in the preseason AVCA Top 25 poll.
Yeah, just that's what Travis Hudson does, man. He reloads every single year. We know we have a lot of talent on that roster, even though we lost Kaylee Cox and a couple other seniors. She was Conference USA Player of the Year this past season, but Hudson gets that respect that he knows the nation knows Conference USA. Everybody knows that he's going to reload and bring a lot of talent back, and be competing to be a top 25 team. So definitely big congratulations to them.
Moving on, WKU softball, they were recognized as having the sixth best team GPA in the country.
Yeah, when I saw that release, I think I saw Todd Stewart share it. It was just kind of crazy. We like to recognize all the on-field accomplishments, obviously, that our athletes do, but we also like to talk about the team awards, the GPAs, the scholars list, etc. That the teams get recognized for. And when our softball team has the sixth best GPA as a team in the entire country of the NCAA, I mean, that is outstanding. That's elite. That's rare company. And that definitely deserves to be recognized and talked about. So definitely congratulations to the softball team.
Moving on, WKU soccer, they fall to Lipscomb 2-3 in their last exhibition match.
Yeah, lost a tough one there. It was tied 2-2 at half, and then end up losing by a goal. And a tough exhibition season for the soccer team. I think they went 1-2 in their 3 matches, and the regular season starts here soon. So hopefully they turn that around. They are scoring some goals, so you like to see that we have some offensive firepower. So we'll be looking forward to the soccer season as it gets started here soon.
And we staying with the soccer team. They were voted ninth in the Conference USA preseason poll.
Yeah, again, that's kind of that's obviously lower than we would like it to be in Conference USA, but we return. I think it was 6 starters that are returning for the soccer team, and just compared to the rest of the league, when I was looking down that release, we really don't have as much just returning players as some of the other teams. We're a younger team, but I still think we can exceed that expectation, especially with Maddie Davis in the goal. She was Player of the Year this last year in 24. So I think we can finish higher than ninth, and I'm definitely looking forward to keeping up with it.
Oh, I am too. And George Hart's third was named to the Doak Walker Award watch list.
Yeah, pretty awesome news for George Hart to be recognized on the Doak Walker Award watch list. Um, I think we have a couple running backs, honestly, that could be in that recognition. Him and Lavelle probably could have shared that award watch list because I think both of those guys are going to be major contributors this year to our running game. But big congratulations to George Hart.
And then Marshall Jackson named Hero Sports News preseason third team All American.
Yeah, well, we will always recognize when we have any athlete named an All American, and Marshall Jackson, the returning redshirt senior left tackle, being recognized as a third team All American. That's just pretty awesome news. Big big praise, big recognition. So very happy for Marshall. Big congratulations.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Red Tail Wrap Up, Moff. I'm gonna hand it off back to you, big dog.
Yeah, man, a lot of good stuff. That the wrap up seems to get longer and longer now as we get into the kind of the thick of summer and getting into fall sports. Just a lot of good stuff to talk about. But man, it's crazy because that also means that we are one day closer now to the WKU football season kicking off for the 2025 season. Like I mentioned earlier, it's crazy. The summer just flew by. We went through all the position breakdowns. Just had a ton of fun researching and learning about all the new players on this roster because there are a lot of new faces and names and numbers that all the fans need to know. And I feel like, both of us obviously have a better grasp of this team and what to expect for this coming season. But so now we get to jump into our season preview and predictions episode for the 2025 season. And obviously, we have to start with Coach Helton. He is entering his seventh season as the head coach for Western Kentucky. He has a 48-32 overall record and a 4-2 record in bowl games. This past season, we finished the season 8-6 overall. We lost in the Conference USA Championship game to Jacksonville State, and then we lost to James Madison in the Boca Raton Bowl. We talked about in the coaches preview, one of the first ones we did in the position breakdown series. We're entering this season with a new offensive coordinator. We have a new defensive coordinator, and now we have a new quarterback in Maverick McIver that will be leading this 2025 squad as we get ever closer to that week 0 kickoff versus Sam Houston. So Tyler, before we, jump in and talk about the schedule and just the specifics, how are you feeling? After completing the position series breakdown, how are you feeling about the 2025 squad and season?
I feel really good about it. I feel like the offense is moving, trending in the right direction. Defense, yes, we did lose some major players from the defensive units, but I think our coaches that got brought in and have been working with the players. I feel like everything's going to be going and running smoothly and going smoothly. I ain't got no qualms with any. I know during the I think the position breakdown, I think it was like D line was one of the weakest spots, or maybe linebackers. Um, I feel like they're going to be strong and come back better this year. Um, and I have a great outlook on this upcoming season. There's a few games that will be tough for us, but I feel like we should have a pretty good season this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're gonna jump in and talk about the schedule. Obviously we did a schedule preview when it was released, many months ago. We just kind of did a quick glance over and kind of a quick reaction to how the schedule played out. But that was before the Field Steel magazine came out, before we were able to deep dive and research and learn more not only about our team, but about our opponents as well. So, just looking at this schedule, and we're going to kind of break it down into 4 game blocks as we look at it. And, we're going to talk about what we're expecting as far as wins and losses. We're not going to jump into score predictions. We'll do that when we do the game predictions for each game. But I've got the schedule pulled up. If you're watching on the video version, it's on the screen now. But I do want to remind everyone that these predictions that we're making now, you are not set in stone. Obviously, once the season starts, if we have an injury, Maverick, or just something goes awry or crazy, or maybe we're way better than we expected to be, some of these wins and losses might flip just depending on the flow of the season, just how things are going in the moment in real time. Once we get to a certain game, if there's some uncertainty, injury, whatever it may be, don't hold us to these predictions as far as once we get to that game, predicting a winner or a loser, because this is just off the information we know now and who's available on the roster right now. I don't think we have any major injuries, luckily, knock on wood, knock on this desk. But first, let's jump into the non-conference part of the schedule. The first 4 games that we're going to talk about, we have North Alabama. We play them at home. We play at Toledo. We have Nevada at home, and then we have LSU on the road. So, Tyler, give me your thoughts on those first 4 games, what you're expecting, and if you got us winning or losing each of those.
Well, the North Alabama, we've had some trouble with some FCS opponents in the past. Last year we handled EKU really really good. Um, but I think we're going to beat them. Then you look at Toledo. Toledo's going to want payback for what happened last year. They did not like coming here and losing by 5 at at Houchin Smith Stadium. So, they're going to be ready to fight. But all right, so North Alabama, we win. Toledo, I feel like it's going to be a dogfight, but we end up winning it. Nevada, they're coming off. I think they're 3-9. Is that correct? 3-9. They haven't really had any good, like the past few seasons for them have been rough. I think we're going to win that one, especially since we're playing them at home. And then LSU, I would love to say we go down there and win it. I really, really want the Toppers to do that, but that one's going to be tough. LSU has always pretty much had a great football team, especially in recent years, and I think that will be a loss right there. But I hope I'm wrong, and the Tops can prove me wrong, and I will gladly crow on that one.
No Hawks, right?
I will never say that again, especially about New Mexico State.
So, tracking your wins and losses there, you got us going 3-1 in non-conference. The only loss being to LSU, beating North Alabama, beating Toledo, and beating Nevada. Looking at my picks, that North Alabama game, they were 3-9 last year. Obviously, an FCS team. Just feels like a game we should just kind of roll over, and it shouldn't be much of a contest for us, where we're coasting in the second half, playing some of our depth guys, getting Maverick out if needed, just not worrying about injury. And that game is right before the Toledo game, so we don't want to show too much of our hand, if not necessary. Get out of there with an easy win. So I think North Alabama should be a pretty easy win. Sorry, LT Sanders, I know you transferred down there, and you'll be in some confines that you're familiar with, but you're walking out there with a loss. And then, I kind of feel the same way as you about that Toledo game. They're a really tough team. They're picked first in the MAC. They were 8-5 last year, dropped a couple games they probably shouldn't have, including a really, really tough game with us that came down to the wire after that crazy thunderstorm. They're a perennial good team. They're receiving votes in the coaches in the AP top 25 poll, projected to win the MAC this year. I just, that game to me just has loss written all over it on the road. If that was at home again, like it was last year, I could maybe coin flip that and give it to us, 51 out of 100 times. But I think going to Toledo that early in the season, that's week 3. I think that's a tough one for me to draw up as a win. So I've got that one as a loss. Then same with LSU. Down the next to last week of the season, going to an SEC school. That's one of those games. They're paying us 1.8 million. That's why we're going there. We've played Alabama last year, Ohio State the year before that. We played Georgia next year. Those type of games they're going to be on our schedule. We need that influx of cash. We need to go down there, hopefully have a good showing. Like you said, it'd be great to go down there and upset them. But more importantly, we need to go down there, be competitive, and come out healthy. Get that $1.8 million paycheck, come back to Bowling Green, and finish out the season strong. But I've got that LSU game as a loss, unfortunately. And then the Nevada game here at home, the first of a home and home. We also play them at Nevada next year. But, that's, I didn't know much about them when that series was scheduled last year. And then when the Phil Steele magazine came out and I got to looking into them, they finished 3-10 last year in the Mountain West. They're picked last in the Mountain West Conference this year in 2025. So, that's the team that, quite frankly, I feel like we have to beat. If we want to be taken seriously as a G5, uh, consistently good and winning team and program, in Conference USA, we have to represent the conference in our out of conference games. And we have to beat a team that's projected last in the Mountain West Conference. That just has to happen. We can't host them here and lose that game. So got us winning that Nevada game. Hopefully it's not close. I'd like to think we can take care of business and it not be a close game and come down to the wire. But in our non-conference, I have us going 2-2 with wins against North Alabama, and then a win against Nevada, and then the losses to Toledo and LSU. So now let's jump into the first 4 games of our conference play. And that obviously starts with the week 0 game that we have coming up on August 23rd. We host Sam Houston. Then we go to Missouri State. And then the week after that, we go to Delaware, and then we host FIU. So, Tyler, talk to me about the first four Conference USA games. What are you thinking, win or lose?
Well, I'm not a big fan of starting season off playing a conference game because your team's got to knock off some of that rust, and I just don't like it. I wish it was a non-con game there, but we do play them at home. Last year, I think they went 10-3. Um, we're if you look back at the history, um, we beat them the last two seasons. Um, and I don't feel like this should be any different. I'm going to have a win right there versus Sam Houston week 0. Then you go down, look at Mississippi State and Delaware. Whenever we had some new teams come in, we had trouble with them. I think we only went like 1 of 4 that season. Whenever Sam Houston and all the other teams came in, um, I think we win one, lose one there. I think we beat Missouri. I think we lose it to Delaware. Um, just and that's just going based on papers. Phil still has a bunch of their positions ranked higher than us for some reason, and there's just a lot of unknown there. Um, like I said, I don't like that we lose one of those, but I feel like that's one that we lose on the road. And then FIU, um, they're that team. I feel like should be an easy win. That's one of the first. Well, that's the first Tuesday game we play. Um, and I'd like to say we win that one, um, kind of easily. But FIU can sometimes surprise you. But I'm going to go win on FIU.
I like it. I take it. So, me jumping in and looking at it, obviously, it is weird to open the season week 0 with a conference game. It's a red out, coming up in just 10 days. We have a red out game 1, Sam Houston coming to town. The only thing that I do like about it, and I feel like gives us an advantage, is that Sam Houston is breaking in a new coaching staff. They lost Casey Keeler, went to Temple after the season last year. Got poached away. Obviously, that comes with a lot of staff turnover. That comes with a lot of roster turnover that would have happened already just from the transfer portal being what it is. But then when you lose a coach, players and those relations, they jump ship, whether they're following them or whether they're looking for a new home somewhere else because the coach that recruited them left. So I really think that gives us a big advantage in the fact that we're entering year 7 with Coach Helton, and even though we have some new coaches, they're the offensive coordinator brought his quarterback with him. I think that gives us another inherent advantage that there's a lot of familiarity there. They've been here since spring, working through the summer into fall camp. There's been a lot of reps and a lot of work going on to build that familiarity with the wide receivers and the system and what's expected. And then the new defensive coordinators, again, they're new defensive coordinators in title. They've been here at Western. They know the systems. There's nothing new being implemented on that side of the ball. So we just got to break in new players, which granted, we have a lot of new players. But I just think we're at an advantage, especially in week 0, game 1 of the season, that I think will be a little bit further ahead of the curve than Sam Houston will as far as figuring the pieces out. And Phil Longo, I don't know how that's going to work out at Sam Houston. I know he's been there before as an offensive coordinator. Has a very explosive offense. Likes to throw the ball around the yard as well, just like Helton and WKU. But I just think we're going to be further ahead of them and what they like to do, and as far as having the players for the system. So I've got Sam Houston down as a win. Coming down the list, looking at the two newcomers, Missouri State and Delaware. We've talked about Missouri State several times, in the schedule preview that we did. There's a lot of ties with Western Kentucky and Missouri State over the years, whether it's, you talked about earlier before we were recording, Bobby Petrino that formerly coached here, went and coached at Missouri State for a while. Ryan Beard, that's their head coach right now, is from Bowling Green, Kentucky, played at Bowling Green High School, played at Western Kentucky University. If you watch the Conference USA Media Days, he talked about that and just how many people have asked him about it. Former running back Ace Wells is currently on staff at Missouri State. Their athletic director is Patrick Ransdale, Gary Ransdale's son, who played baseball here at Western Kentucky. So it's pretty neat that there's so many just ties that we have to each other as universities. But they are new. They're moving up to Conference USA to FBS, even though they did play in one of the tougher FCS conferences the past couple years. I think we're just going to be ahead of them as well. I think they're going to be tough, and I think long term they're going to be a good contender in Conference USA. But I just think year one, even though it's on the road, that's the only thing that makes me a little uneasy. I'm marking Missouri State down as a W. And then kind of same with Delaware. Like you said, when we were talking position groups, Delaware was very highly ranked across the board. They're one of the lowest turnover teams in the nation, if I recall correctly. They're returning a lot of production. They're good on the line on both sides of the ball, their offensive line and their defensive line. That's where you win some ball games. So I think they're going to be tough. And I think long term, especially, they're going to be a really good addition for Conference USA as far as their budget and their competitiveness and just how good they're going to be. But that being said, I still have to mark Delaware down. I just don't think year one that we're going to get stung by one of those new guys. I hope I'm right. I don't want to eat that crow, but I'm going to mark Delaware as a W as well. And then FIU, they're kind of another team in Conference USA that is breaking in a new coach. Year one coach in Willie Simmons from Florida, from FAMU, that's coming over. They have the Conference USA preseason player of the year in Kewan Jenkins at quarterback. But they've underperformed for so many years. They haven't been good in football since what T.Y. Hilton was there. In the 2010s, whenever that was. So it's been a long time since they were good. It just seems like every time we play them, we just seem to run the scoreboard up. If you just look historically at what we've done to them, it's not been pretty. That's our first midweek game. It's a blackout game. It would be awesome if we're having a pregame concert like we have the last couple of years. I don't know, haven't heard that. I'm not announcing that, but hopefully we have a great environment for that game. But I've got to mark FIU down, man. That's a W in my opinion. I just don't see us losing that one. Not this year. I think they'll be improved. New coaching staff, better recruiting, returning quarterback. I think they'll be improved, but I don't think they're leapfrogging us as far as beating us on the schedule head to head. So that's a W for me. Now looking at the last four Conference USA games, we got games at Louisiana Tech. We host New Mexico State. We host Middle Tennessee, and then we play at Jacksonville State to close the season. Tyler, what are those games looking like for you?
Well, I don't like Sonny Crumby. I'm going to, I'm not a fan of him. We have last time we played down at Ruston, we end up winning. I feel like that should be a W for us. Last year kind of an outlier. And even in the notes, historical notes, last year's game was the lowest scoring game since like the 1940s season. So you can't expect that to happen very much. So I think we win against La Tech. New Mexico State, that's going to be homecoming November 1st. I think that's another W. I'm just not going to say they have no ball hawks, because that always comes back and bites me right in the butt. But I do think we beat New Mexico State. MTSU, you look back at last year, 49-21, 31-10, 23, 22, 35-17. I just got to go with another dub there, especially since we're playing them at home. I feel like that's going to be another beating right there. And then you look at Jack State. Yes, they lost their QB and running back from last year. They're both gone. I don't think they're going to be. And I think they have a new coach as well this year. So I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as good as they was last year, because you got to think their QB and running back, I mean, they just ran all over us. Um, and I don't think they're going to have that this year. I don't think they have that in the stable. So uh, I think for Jacksonville or at Jacksonville, even though we are playing them down there, I think that's going to be an easy win.
Ooh wee! I like it, man. I like what I'm hearing. Um, yeah, I'm gonna jump in. First of all, the game at Louisiana Tech, man, that's one of the tougher games for me to really pick. You talked about Sonny Cumby. Kind of surprising that he actually got the return this year. They had a pair of 3-9 seasons, in 22 and 23. Then last year they were 5-8. Underperformed. They only got to play in a bowl game because Marshall didn't have a team that could play in the bowl game. They ended up having to opt out, and Louisiana Tech got that invitation and took a pretty bad loss. But like you said, man, that game last year with Louisiana Tech was a bad one at home for us to lose 7-12. We held them out of the end zone. They kicked 4 field goals, but we weren't able to put more than 7 points on the board. That was kind of in my opinion, kind of a low point for us. Just last year when we controlled our destiny at that time. If we win, we're playing for a championship. But we kind of backpedaled into that, lost a couple games, and then needed some help down the line for Liberty had to lose a game for us to be able to play in that championship game. So maybe this one has a little bit of revenge on the mind. Maybe that's I think offensively, I think we're going to be better than we were last year, even though Caden Belkamp and Keyshawn and Easton Messer, those guys were pretty good last year. But in that game versus Louisiana Tech, I mean their defense was good. It was the best defense in Conference USA. I think they'll still be good defensively this year, but they did lose their defensive coordinator. They basically have a whole new defensive line. They have a good secondary. I'm not going to take anything away from there. When we did position breakdowns, it was us, Liberty, and Louisiana Tech that had the best secondaries cornerbacks in the league. So they'll be good against the pass, but I just think offensively we're going to be better than they were. And I think defensively, they're going to take a step back. They're not going to be as clamped and locked down as they were last year. So give me a win versus Louisiana Tech. Then the game versus New Mexico State. Like you said, that's homecoming. Should be hopefully a good crowd, good atmosphere. They're in year, I think it's 2 or 3 with Tony Sanchez, a pretty new coach. They don't have Diego Pavia walking through that door anymore. Whether they got ball hawks or not on that side of the ball. Um, I don't know. I just don't see them improving as much as they need to beat us in a game. I just think we're going to be that much better, and that should be a pretty convincing win on homecoming. I think that's an easy W. Middle Tennessee game, 100 miles of hate. That is senior night, and so far Tyson Helton is 6-0 on senior night games. He has not lost a game. Sending out the seniors on a high note has been a W all 6 years. It also has been 2,447 days as we record tonight, since they last beat us in a game in 2018, which Coach Sanford was at the helm back then. So it's been a long time since Middle Tennessee could say they beat us in a football game. So senior night, 2,000 plus game streak. Sorry, Derek Mason, you won 3 games last year. Maybe you're better this year. I know they're optimistic. There's a lot of good vibes around the program. They just had a student athletic performance center that opened. Derek Mason's banging the drums and trying to rally the troops there, but sorry, just not enough troops in Murfreesboro. It's going to be a W for WKU. And then the Jacksonville State game. Like you said, they do have a new coach. Rich Rodriguez left. He took his ball and part of his staff and some of his players, and he's now at West Virginia. And we kind of know that Rich Rodriguez he is a offensive guru. He helped them be very successful the last couple of years. They've got a new coach in Charles Kelly. I know they are Jacksonville State fans. That is, are very confident in the coaching transition and his ability to recruit. I know he's a very well thought after recruiter, recruits at a high level, brings in good talent. But he's a first time head coach, and that would give me pause. And that would be it's tough. There's growing pains, and I think that's going to be why if they take a step back, which I would expect with as much roster turnover they have, staff turnover that they have, and then you have a new head coach trying to find his way. I remember when Willie Taggart was a first time head coach here, man. There was some times where you're just like, what is he doing? Clock management, timeout management wasn't great. Even Jeff Brom, when he first took over his first time as a head coach, there's early parts of 2014, it just wasn't always pretty, before it got really good at the end of 2014 and into 15 and 16. Being a first time head coach is tough. And sometimes you have to learn, and through those learns, you might take some losses. And I think long term, I think Jacksonville State's going to be fine. I think they're a good enough program to make a good hire and stay good and competitive. And I think they'll be competitive in Conference USA. But I think we take the win and close out the season strong. Obviously, that's I think both of us here. Let's see, I've got us projected to go 10-2, looking at the records, and you have us projected to go 10-2. So obviously, really, really, really strong records for both of us. I have us losing to Toledo and LSU. Both of those non-conference games got us going undefeated in conference play. Then you got us losing to LSU in Delaware. So 3-1 in conference or non-conference play, 7-1 in Conference USA play. I think we can both live with that, and it would be a pretty good season and actually hush some of the Helton haters, the 7-5 and 8-4 Helton haters that just want him to get over that hump. Man, we're ready for it, and I think it can happen. Tyler, I got to ask some questions for you. What does this 2025 team have to do to be better than the 2024 team?
Well, last year, whenever and it was that La Tech game, is kind of whenever our downhill, our team went downhill. It seems like from there we could not stop the run. The offense was just kind of discombobulated. So we're definitely going to have to improve upon that. But I think we're going to have to be able to stop the run game because, and not just 2024, but past few years, the other teams like running back or quarterback, just gutted us and got massive yards on that. I think our pass defense last year did great, and we don't have to improve on that, but definitely the rush defense is definitely gonna have to step up, and I think they will. But that's something that I see is definitely going to have to improve.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. As far as what we have to improve on this year to be better than last year, I think it starts with the run defense, which, just at times last year, especially down the stretch, we just were getting shredded across the board. Louisiana Tech, we played Jacksonville State twice. There's some good rushing offenses and there's some good mobile quarterbacks in this league. And we have to be able to contain the run game, get off the field on third down, when we know it's third and short, third and medium, third and whatever, and we know a running play's coming. We have to be able to stop it, just point blank period. We have to be able to stop them, get them off the field and put our offense back on the field. Who I also think, there needs to be some improvement. I think it's mainly consistency. And I don't want to necessarily call it out and say, the Will Friend at offensive coordinator last year was a failure. I just feel like it was inconsistent as far as our track record of offensive coordinators, where we had, Ben Arbuckle and Zach Kitley, and now we've got Rick Bowie, these young, innovative offensive coordinators that are going to open up a playbook and put players in position to succeed. I don't think Will Friend was that. He seemed more like an offensive line coach when you look at his resume, his history, and now he's went to North Carolina. We wish him the best of luck there. Have no ill will with him, but I think we made an upgrade from our offensive coordinator position, and what should parlay into better play calling, more successful drives, more points. So I think obviously if we improve on run defense and then the offense is more consistent, putting more points on the board. I think we only averaged 24 points per game last season. My magic number and mark in Conference USA has always been at 30 points per game. If you take the games we lost last year, and if we were at 30 points, we probably flipped those most of those losses to wins last year. Yeah, that's just kind of where you have to be in this conference. It's a very high scoring conference, and we have to be there. We can't be at 24 points per game. That's not going to cut it. So, I think that's what we have to improve upon. And when we do improve upon those things, I think we will this season. I think we'll be much better this season than we were last season. Now we went down, both of us went down and projected our wins and losses. But I kind of want to throw it back and just look at it a little bit differently and talk about the ceiling and floor for this team. And the ceiling being if everything goes perfect, if this team and Rick Bowie and Maverick, throws for 6,000 yards, and our defense is, top 25, top 50 in the nation, and all of a sudden we just everything's clicking. Offense, defense, special teams, everything's amazing. What's the ceiling for this team? And then also look at it from what's the floor of this team. Just if the bottom falls out, if the quarterback doesn't figure it out, or if Maverick gets injured and a backup that we have on the roster right now, who we don't have one that has any FBS snaps under the belt. Just looking at worst case scenario, if we're just not as good or not as improved or not as talented as we hope we are, what is the floor, and then what's the ceiling of this team, Tyler? If you just looking at our schedule, looking at what you've already projected for wins and losses, what's the best and worst case scenario, given those factors?
Um, Man, I'd say for the ceiling, I like to say 14-0 and I'm gonna go 13-1. The floor though, I'd hate to see another 2020 year or 2017. Um, Actually, yeah, I'd hate to see another 2020 because it was worse. But um, I don't want to say 5-7. Um, but I'll do that. I'll say the floor, 5-7.
All right, so I'm looking at it. I think the ceiling of this team, um, I think the LSU game is a loss. I mean, that's an SEC game. That's on the road. Um, hasn't happened in a while for us. I think since Arkansas or since Vanderbilt, the last two times we beat an SEC school since UK won't schedule us anymore. That's probably a loss for us, no matter how good we play. I'd love to be wrong. Please be wrong, Stephen. Please, WKU football, go down to Baton Rouge and shock them. I would love to be wrong on that, but just looking at the ceiling, my only other loss, that I feel like is probably going to happen is Toledo, but I think we can beat them. I just think they're ahead of where we are right now as a football team. As far as they have a coach in Jason Candle that's also tenured, like Coach Helton is. He's been successful. He's won a lot of ball games, and they just compete at a high level. And we saw that last year here at the house. It took a couple miraculous plays and interceptions, and ball bouncing our way a couple times to get out of there with the victory last year here at home. So, but I think we can beat Toledo. I just think we might have to go in there and play, one of our best games of the season to be able to upset them on the road. I fully expect us to be underdogs. I don't think it'll be much, 6.5, 4.5 to 6.5 point underdogs on the road. I don't think it's gonna be a ton. It's not gonna be double digit, but we can win that game. It's just one of those games that I don't think we're used to seeing Tyson Helton win as the underdog on the road. To go win that game will be tough, but we can win it. So I think our feeling to me is 11-1. And then obviously I would hope we'd play in a conference championship game and win that as well. But just I'm going to go with 11-1 as my ceiling. And then looking at my floor, if we're just not as good or if we're injured or whatever going on, I just don't see any way that we drop below 7-5. And I think that's kind of been almost a benchmark of Tyson Helton's tenure here. Other than the 2020 season, no matter what's happened, injuries or whatever, we're going to be 7-5. We're going to be bowl eligible. I just don't see us dropping below that point. I'd almost argue and make a case looking at our schedule that it might be 8-4. But I think 7-5 is maybe giving away a couple games that just, we don't play up to snuff, or they play better than us, or a ball bounces our way, or turnover, or whatever could happen. if that happens, worst case, I could see us going 7-5, but I don't see it going any worse than that, just to be honest. Tyler, looking at the schedule, I want to ask you about who you think the toughest game is, and I think you almost kind of have to give LSU a wash. Yeah, I think that's kind of an automatic given. SEC on the road, yeah, that's going to be a tough game. Who do you think is the toughest game on this schedule?
Well, yeah, you're right. I was going to say, let's not even count LSU because that's just a given. Um, I, I'd had to go with Toledo. I said I said that was going to be a dub earlier in the episode, but I mean I said it's going to be a dogfight, it is. I mean Toledo is a good team, and they they know what they're doing. And I just feel like that's going to be a just a knockdown drag out game. I'm still thinking we can win it, but it is going to be a tough one. It's going to be a close one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and mostly for the reasons I've already stated. Just talking about the ceiling and floor of this team, I just think I have a lot of respect for Toledo and what they are as a program and as a team, and just how good a coach that Jason Candle is. He kind of reminds me a lot of their version of Tyson Helton almost. He has them competitive year in and year out. They're going to be picked near the top of the MAC. They're picked to win the MAC this year. They're near the top last year. They're kind of in that same boat as we are. We're always competitive in conference. Um, so to me, that's the toughest game. I think I'm not picking a Conference USA game just because there's so much new in Conference USA. Talked about several teams that have brand new coaches, several teams that have second and third year coaches. They're still trying to figure things out. And then you've got the two newcomers in Missouri State and Delaware that, you don't exactly know what their transition is going to be like. We've seen teams, Jacksonville State and Sam Houston, who transitioned quickly and were successful. But then you also have the Kennesaw States of the world that, the transition can be tough and might take them a few years before they get their footing and start winning some ball games. So, I think it's Toledo. I think they're definitely the toughest game. And hopefully we win that one. Hopefully that toughest game turns into one that we just show out and play our best game of the year and we win. And that would be lovely, quite frankly. Tyler, if you had to call any of these games a trap game, is there a trap game on the schedule that maybe getting overlooked or just not thinking about it? You're looking ahead to the next opponent.
Well, I would say North Alabama because you're coming off of a conference game week 0, and you got Toledo in week 3. Um, but I think I'm going to change that. I think I will say FIU. For some reason I just feeling like FIU could be a trap game. We're coming off a bye week. We got La Tech the week after them. And I've FIU uh, with that new coach, he does feel like he's got some playmakers down there. He feels the defense is quicker. And I just feel like we could overlook them because, as you said, we have been running scoreboard up on them. So if we kind of get lulled into that historically, um, and we look towards La Tech, that right there could be the trap game. I don't feel, but see, we have that bye week for that, so I don't feel like that could be because we spend the whole week getting ready just for them. Dang. I guess I'm gonna go back on the first one, North Alabama. I do I feel like they can beat us? No. Um, but because I kind of thought that last year with EKU. I thought I even said it whenever I did their podcast. I was like, I honestly thought y'all are going to be a trap game. And they was like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, man, we just played Alabama. We got another G5 team right after y'all. Yeah, I'll have to go North Alabama to be a trap game. But it's just because we are coming off a bye week playing FIU. So I feel like the team is going to be ready for them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Louisiana Tech. I think that could be a potential. I don't want to say trap game, but I don't know. I think FIU is going to be better than what they have been, even though I think we're going to win and kind of cruise to a victory there. And then homecomings the week after, or is after Louisiana Tech. I don't want to say we're looking forward to it, but it's our last midweek game playing Louisiana Tech, who they're another one of the teams with Sonny Cumby who's in his fourth season. Um, he's kind of one of those coaches that he is known for his offenses. He came from Texas Tech. Him leaving there and coming to Louisiana Tech is why we lost Zach Kitley in 2021, who's now the head coach at FAU. So it's just crazy how we're kind of connected and aware of Sonny Cumby, because that was the one job we didn't want to come open. But I just think the Law Tech game, they were a game that when I was picking wins and losses, I kind of was coin flipped back and forth between, do we beat them or do we not beat them? And I just think they're more likely to take a step back, especially defensively. And hopefully we're not overlooking them. They obviously beat us last year. There's a ton of new players on our roster who didn't feel that sting, but there's also plenty of returning players who are going to remember that 7-12 game, and just how bad that felt when we controlled our destiny. So, I think it's La Tech at third place. Hopefully we show up and just don't have a flat game in Ruston, which at times has been a tough place to win for us. Luckily, a couple years ago we had Malachi Corley and his 200 receiving yard game that put us over the top, and we still held on to barely win that game, if you recall. So I think La Tech could be a tricky game for us. I think that's one that's kind of almost a coin flip, but I just think we're going to be a step ahead of them and more improved than they are coming into the season. Now, Tyler, I have to ask this one: if there is a must-win game on the season, what is that game for you?
I think that is there's not an echo in here, but I think it's going to be La Tech. I think they are ranked above us in the field still. And Liberty's right in front of them, and I think if we want to get back in the conference championship game, I think it goes through La Tech. I think conference wise, they could be one of the toughest. Last year they had like a 4-8 season, 5-8. But they played spoiler to some teams, and us being key one. So yeah, I'm gonna go with La Tech being if there is a must win game. I feel like we're easily gonna beat MTSU. New Mexico State, I feel like that's easy, and Jack State should be another easy one. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go with La Tech.
Talking about La Tech, I saw a stat somewhere for them. I forget where it was. In the off season, just researching. I think they lost, I want to say if it was 5 or 6 one-score games last year, just looking at their 5-8 record, and so many of their games were just close losses because they weren't quite good enough offensively. So yeah, they are one of those tricky games that, if they had just flipped a couple of those one-score losses into wins last year, they could have been a 7-8 win team, pretty easily. But they finished the season 5-8. If I had to look at a must-win game, kind of have a couple of them for a couple of different reasons, and I'm going to explain. One, I think MTSU is a must-win game. I think if I was looking at this under the lens of if we could only win one game this season, who would I want to beat? And it would have to be MTSU, even more than LSU. I would never want to give MTSU the bragging rights to say that they beat us. Like I said earlier, it's been 2,447 days as of Wednesday, August 13th, since they beat us. So that's a must-win game, in my opinion. Not to mention it's senior night. Helton wants to go 7-0, send the seniors off right. But I think the other must-win game that I'll actually circle is the Jacksonville State game. And I say that because, one, we don't play Liberty this year. We avoid Liberty, we avoid UTEP, we avoid Kennesaw State. So now we have to look at who are the other contenders in the league. Jacksonville State's the defending champion. Obviously they had a coaching staff turnover. They've got a lot of roster turnover, but to be the man, you've got to beat the man. And, we beat them last year. It took a walk-off field goal by Lucas Canero to beat them and send us to the championship game. But then they boat raced us. When we went to their place the next week for the conference championship game, they absolutely put it on us, and they are cocky and confident that, even with all the changes and new in their football facility and on their roster, they are confident that they are going to come in and defend that championship this year. They think they're getting disrespected a lot in, the preseason polls and where they're being picked in conference and where they're being ranked in the total nation out of 136 teams. They're below us, they're below Liberty, they're below several teams in Conference USA that they feel like they should be better than. Um, but there's a lot of variables that are making the people making those picks. They just have so much unknown, and I think that's the same for so much of Conference USA. We've talked about every single team that we play. There's just a lot of question marks. And until we get on the football field, whether it's week 0 for us or week 1 for the other conference teams and start seeing people play under the lights, that's when we learn and we figure out, who's put it together, who's the most prepared and going to go win some ball games. So I think, that Jacksonville State game at the end of the year, if they're as reloaded as they think they are, if Charles Kelly is as good a recruiter and coach as they think he's going to be, I've seen them say they think they're better across the board, every skill position. Tyler Huff, that quarterback, that was awesome. Trey Stewart, their running back, they think they're better across the board with their skill positions and players. They think they've upgraded. So, they think they're going to be dangerous. And I don't know. We'll see. But I think that, to me, that makes that a must win game that, could have, championship game implications like it did last year. Maybe we have to win that to be in that championship game again. And that's obviously the goal and the hope. So give me Jacksonville State. Even though we don't know how good they'll be, we don't know if that last game of the season will have any implications. But if it does, we've got to win that ball game. So Tyler, now I've got to ask, can Coach Helton and this team in 2025, can we make the Conference USA championship game? And if so, who will it be against? And can we win it?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say that Jack State, calm down. Your quarterback that Slade started came from UK. UK is not known for having strong QBs. Let's just back that up right there. And then your running back, he came from TCU, but did he do anything? Let's look. Let's see. Cam Cook. Ooh, he had 9 games and had 58 rush yards in 23. He had 6 starts in 24 and had 460 rushing yards. So, eh, you know, and your receivers, I'm not really going to look at them because your QB and your running backs with your main workhorses. So just chill. All right, you ain't special. All right, moving on. Do I think we can make it? Yeah, I feel like this conference, our conference schedule, kind of gives us a somewhat easy pathway to get there. Yeah, there's a chance we're going to cough up some conference games. I mean, that it's probably going to happen, but I hope it don't. So I think if we make it to the conference championship game, I have no other reason to believe it wouldn't be against Liberty. They've been really good since they came into Conference USA, and they've always been a thorn in our sides. And I feel like if we make it to conference and to the championship game, that's who we're going to be playing against. They have the same coach as last year. This is his 3rd year there, Jamie Chadwell. Yeah, they lost their QB and they lost their running back, but I mean, that Jamie Chadwell guy's, he's recruiting good, he builds them up good, and he has them playing good. So I think that's who we're playing against, and if we make it to the conference championship game.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in that same frame of thought. Can we make the championship game? Absolutely. I think that's not a question. We've been 3 times under Helton. We've made it to that championship game. We've just can't get over that hump. That's been something we've talked about all summer. We talked about last year. We've talked about it in the preseason, leading up to week 0, game 1. That's the reason why Tyson Helton is probably still coaching here at WKU today, because unable to beat UTSA in 21, unable to beat Jacksonville State last year. If he wins either or both of those games, he's probably getting poached away to another program, wherever that may be. He's had interest a couple times, including last year, but kind of backpedaled his way out of that consideration. So, can we make the championship game? Absolutely. Like we mentioned earlier, we don't play Liberty this year in the regular season. Um, I think that could play into our advantage. Liberty has been tough for us. They've beaten us all 3 years. They've been in Conference USA, kind of been a thorn in our side football wise. But they're going to be a good program. I think we've said that ever since they joined, and we've ever have talked about Liberty. We expect with their resources and what they bring to the conference and their competitiveness, they're going to be near the top of the conference every single year. So, can we make the conference championship? Absolutely. And if we do make that conference championship, it's probably going to be against Liberty. Not going to pick fun at them, but once again, this season they have one of the weakest schedules in all of FBS. I have 136. I think they're 134 by Phil Steele, 136 by some other metrics, just depending on who you're looking at. They're not playing the tough P4 teams away, like we're playing LSU or Alabama or Ohio State or Georgia next year. They're not playing those games because they don't need that influx of cash like we do. They have more resources. So they're not taking those losses that could, potentially set them back, cause injuries, deflate the team and morale, etc. Um, I just think they're a team that no matter what, they're going to be competitive and they're going to be near the top of the conference. So can we make the championship game? Yes, 1000%. I actually expect it. I have us going 8-0 in conference. And leading up to this episode, I actually, was convinced that I was going to write down that we were going to be 7-1 in conference. I just think, I was like, all right, we're going to split the non-conference. We're going to be 2-2, and we're going to lose one of these conference games. I don't know which one it's going to be, but we stumble on one or two every single year. And then as we got to combing down them and talking about them, I talked myself out of it. I was like, I just think we can run the table. I think ever since the schedule came out, when we first talked about it, that was one thing we said is that, man, this schedule sets up really nicely for us to have a special season. Even that 11-1 type season that is the ceiling, that I picked for this team and you picked for this team, that, maybe we only lose to LSU if we're as good as we think we can be. It could be a special season. But yeah, I think we're going to go to the conference championship game. That's why I put us at 8-0 in conference and 2-2 in non-conference. So I think we can make the championship game. I think we will make the championship game, and I think it'll be against Liberty. But just talking about Liberty, we didn't talk about them because we don't play them this year, and unless we play them in the championship. But like you said, they have a lot of new going on over there, just like everybody else in conference. Caden Salter transferred. He went to Colorado playing for Coach Prime. Apparently, he was a locker room cancer last year and was the reason why they stumbled and weren't as good as they were, the previous year when they went to a New Year's Six bowl. Um, Lost their running back, who was just a bowling ball of a player, and was Quentin Cooley. He was a heck of a player. He was a tough to bring down. He's tough, and they will have more skilled players behind them, running backs, etc., ready to step up and take their place. But the biggest question mark starts at quarterback. They've got Ethan Vasco, who transferred from Coastal Carolina. Chadwell was there previously. He has experience with him. Then they have Ryan Berger, who transferred from App State, if I'm not mistaken. They haven't named a starter. We don't know who it's going to be. They don't know who it's going to be, as far as we're aware. So they've got a question mark, just like the rest of the conference. Or they don't have Caden Salter returning to be QB1. They have to figure that out and learn on the fly, and that could be some losses for them. So we can make the championship game. We're going to play Liberty, and we're going to beat them this time. Quite frankly, we're going to beat Liberty, get that monkey off our back, finally put an L on them, which is long overdue at this point. They're tough, and they're going to remain tough, and it's not going to be an easy game if we do play them. Obviously, at the Houch, if we're 8-0, it's going to be at the Houch, not at their place. Sorry, Lynchburg. Sorry, Jeremiah. But we're hosting that game. It's going to be packed. Hopefully, good weather, not cold, and a championship for Tyson Helton. But man, good episode. A lot of fun, a lot of information, a lot of just projecting what we think could happen. And I think anything can happen in Conference USA. Quite frankly, like we've said several times, there's just so much new and so much unknown in this conference. But I think that plays into our favor with everything we've talked about, with where I think this offense is going to go with Rick Bowie. with Maverick McIver, with all the weapons that we have surrounding him. We talked about the wide receiver group just last week. Um, I think we're in a really good position to control our destiny and potentially put that special season together. That 11-1 is it's not impossible, that's for sure. But I just think this is going to be a really, really fun year, really special year. Obviously, looking forward to that week 0 preview that we'll be talking about next week, where we actually dive in to Sam Houston. We'll talk about their players, who we need to know and be aware of, and the point spread and just the series history and just all that information that we have to talk about just to know more about them, other than both of us just saying we're going to win. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody, but really looking forward to that, because that means football is that much closer. 10 days away now as we record. Obviously, when this comes out tomorrow, 9 days away. So can't wait. Week 0 is right here on us, man. Tyler, hit us with your final words and take us on out of here.
Yeah, see, I put my ceiling as 13-1 because we're going to win conference championship. We're going to win the bowl game. I don't care who the bowl game's against. It's a dub. Conference championship, dub. Liberty suck, I guess. But nah, it is crazy that 9 days away from season opening. This year's just flown by. I can't believe it's already mid-August, pretty much. It just blows my mind. Time needs to slow down just a little bit, you know. But next week's episode is going to be dope. Sam Houston game preview. It's always fun to jump into those because now, instead of just learning about our guys, we learn about their dudes and what we think they're going to do, and and what they are good at. So that's always a good exercise for both of us. And man, I'm just here for it. I'm ready for it. But with that, Moff, who has better than us?
Nobody, buddy. You know it.
Go Tops.
Go Tops. Later, guys.
See y'all.